that what we actually need is an economic system that serves the people, that serves the grassroots, and lifts people up. And so I think Occupy, with this idea of the 1% and the 99%, really making it clear that the vast majority of people in this country are not benefiting from our current economic system. And I still hear references to, to the 1% and the 99%. And it was a way of bringing this really important economic argument and this idea of class consciousness to the mainstream. And I think Occupy had a huge effect on how we talk about how we talk about the economy now, about how we talk about politics now. Bernie Sanders talked about, the 1%, and I think that campaign is very much was very much bolstered by the work that Occupy did a few years back. And then Moral Monday had a huge impact on North Carolina and on the country. Reverend Barber is now a national level speaker. He spoke at the DNC. He's been really active nationally on social justice issues. And I think that the Moral Monday movement has had a really huge impact on the conversation in North Carolina around social justice. And I think that we definitely did play a role in the defeat of Pat McCrory. There were a lot of reasons that he lost, but I think that the huge citizen-led activist movement opposing his policies and his administration were really a huge part of that. And I was arrested at Moral Monday. I think I was I can't remember if I was either the third or the fifth week of Moral Monday folks to get arrested, but got arrested with a number of other folks, and I was one of the people who refused to plead to the charges and kind of just waited it out. I think I went to court. I think I had 5 or 6 continuances before the charges were finally dropped. And I think that, having 1,000 people who were willing to walk into the legislature and be arrested for opposing these incredibly unfair and unjust agendas that the Republicans were putting forward, I thought that was really powerful, and I think we really made a difference in the state, and we set a national model for resistance to that sort of administration.
Definitely. Now, one of the things that I have observed, and I want to know if you've observed this as well, is that unfortunately some of the things that we learned in Occupy and in Moral Mondays and in other things are sometimes to some degree being turned against us because, like I said, one of the things I remember about Moral Mondays and even Occupy and some of the other movements is that we were very much good at using the tools of social media. Unfortunately, the current administration is also using social media and use it in their own ways and everything. So I was wondering what some of your thoughts were about how maybe we started a trend that others are taking advantage of and kind of using it on the opposite side of the political spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, tools are tools, right? They can be used for good or they can be used for evil. I mean, social media is a really powerful tool because of its accessibility and its speed. It's a way to immediately put your thoughts out into the world. And I think we're seeing, with Donald Trump and Twitter, everyone wants to talk about Donald Trump and Twitter, but I think it is really a critical moment, a critical change in how politics are happening now in this country and in the world that, we have this president who does not actually know how to govern or even how to control himself, getting on this platform where he is able to, very quickly publish his every thought in a way that has created very serious, very real security threats for this country and for the world. Because he, will go, he'll just jump on Twitter and insult the leader of another nuclear armed nation as if it's nothing. And at the same time, I feel like I don't know how effective the sort of organizing that I do would be without Facebook and without Twitter, because, if I'm organizing a rally, a demonstration, an event, even like a movie screening, the first thing I do is put it on Facebook. and invite, all the folks who have liked whatever organization I'm working with at the time. So, I think these are really powerful tools, and like any really powerful tool, in the wrong hands, they can be really dangerous. And I think we're seeing some of the downsides of that quick access to an audience, that ability to just put your thoughts out there instantly, to millions of people. There are lots of advantages, and there's also some pretty severe disadvantages. And I think that that we're becoming more and more aware of that as we deal with this Trump administration.
Oh, yeah. And another thing that I've noticed, and you're part of one of the organizations that has even been part of this and everything, and the name of it is slipping me right now, but it also seems like we're starting to see more of a youth movement. I mean, you're definitely a young activist yourself. We've got gentleman, Pierce Freelon, is running for mayor. We've got others running around the country. Dean is actually up in New Jersey, so I know we've got some young leaders up in even New Jersey and New York area. But it does seem like we're finding more leaders that are coming not necessarily out of the traditional sources of the ways Democrats and Republicans have picked their leadership in the past. Would you agree with that? And is that something that you think is a good thing that we're seeing happening now? Because we're starting to find people that are even not being endorsed by necessarily some of the power brokers in the communities, wherever those communities are, whether that's some of the PACs, or whether that's like the regular Democratic Party or the regular Libertarian Party, or whatever the party may be.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that there is starting to be a generational shift in who is taking leadership here in Durham. I was born in 1981. I'm the youngest person on city council right now, but there are several people younger than me who are running. As you mentioned, Pierce Freelon is 33, Bernetta Alston's 34. There are a number of folks running for the open seat in Ward 2 who are in their 30s, and at least one who's in her 20s. So I think that there has been there is a generational shift happening, and I think that's really exciting and really important. I also think that having elders, especially movement elders, folks who have been involved for a long time, like Steve Schul, who's been an activist, since the Vietnam War era, having those folks involved in government is also really important. And also having folks who've been in the city for a long time. We have, especially on our staff, people who have dedicated, 10, 20, 30 years to the city of Durham, and that institutional memory and that experience is something that that is really important. So I think, I think you can't discount one for the other. You want youth, you want new energy, you want new ideas, but you also want breadth and depth of experience and folks who have been in this fight for a long time. That's really critical. But I do think that there is a generational shift happening all over the country, and I'm also doing a lot of work with a group called Durham for All, which is an organization. The leadership of our organization is primarily younger people, people in their 20s and 30s. We've all lived in Durham for a long time. We've all been activists in Durham and organizers in Durham, and are trying to turn that experience and build a new political vehicle that is cross-class and multi-race and really centers the voices of people who are most impacted by issues of injustice. And I've been privileged to join a couple of national organizations for elected officials, one called the Young Elected Officials Network, which brings together progressive electeds from all over the country who are 35 and under, and then a group called Local Progress, which networks all local progressive elected officials from around the country. And there are definitely, I feel like, more and more people coming from an organizing background and an activist background and entering local politics, seeing that really as not necessarily, just a career, but like an extension of activism, a way to continue making change and building the sorts of communities that we want to see. And so being parts of those networks, networking with young people and with people who have come into politics from a background in organizing has been really exciting for me, and has been I think is part of a national trend. I think there are more and more people who are being inspired to run for office, either because they are concerned about the direction that we're heading, or because they have been involved in activist movements for a long time and feel like They want to have a more direct role in actually creating change, building an inside-outside strategy. So I think there are some really exciting changes happening, and I think the Durham election is an example of that, and it's happening all over the country too.
Yeah. What do you think is some of the important, we talked about some of the issues that have come across when we've had other guests like Lamont and Reverend Kenny, but what do you see as some of the important issues in Durham and even on the national level that really need to be addressed as fast as possible? Like if you were able to put in like an agenda of things that need to be addressed quickly in Durham and even on a national level, what would those agenda items be?
Yeah, so I think in Durham, you know, the thing that keeps me awake at night is our housing crisis. We are in a situation where we have spent a lot of public money, and there has also been, even more, a lot of private money invested in revitalizing downtown Durham. And as a direct result, we now have a situation where rents and home prices have been accelerating rapidly in the neighborhoods around downtown, including the neighborhood that I live in. I live in the West End neighborhood. I'm walking distance from downtown. I bought my house in 2005, and I couldn't afford to buy my house now. Houses in my neighborhood are selling for $300,000 and up, which is, 3 times what I paid for my house. And it's, my taxes went up over $100 a month. My mortgage payment now is $100 a month more because of the increase in property taxes based on the valuation of my house. And I'm lucky, my family has the resources to pay that. And I think that, given my financial position, my family's financial position, we are paying our fair share. But a lot of my neighbors, who've lived in their houses for 20 or 30 years, who've been here for a long time, who have really, have committed to this neighborhood and have really built the character and the quality of this neighborhood over the years, they can afford an extra $100, $200 a month to live in their homes. And renters are even worse off because your rent can go up at any point, right? My mortgage can only go up, if my tax rate goes up or my insurance goes up, but your rent can just be raised at any point by your landlord. We don't have any reasonable tenant protections or restrictions on rent in this city or this state. And so folks who are renting in this community are extremely vulnerable to displacement. And we're seeing displacement all over town, especially concentrated in what I call the ring neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that ring downtown. But even in other parts of the city, we're seeing displacement. And I think that it's an existential threat to Durham. Having a city where people, lower income people, working class people, people of color can no longer afford to live would fundamentally change the character of Durham in ways that I think are completely unacceptable. And so making sure that an equal amount of city money and attention is going into dealing with this affordable housing crisis as went into the revitalization of downtown would be my number one priority. I think it is critical that we continue to act, and that we get this right, because the future of our city really is depending on what we do at this moment. I really feel like we are at a critical point in our history, and what we do now is going to affect what this city looks like for the next 50 to 100 years. I mean, it's really important.
I definitely agree with you on that. And one of the things that I've noticed is that one of the things that Durham has always prided itself on, and you actually used the term earlier, is being a very progressive city. And it's always been very supportive of the LGBT community. It's been supportive of our brothers and sisters who are Hispanic descent in terms of giving folks that are of Latin American descent rights and everything. And I was wondering, do you think that that is still very much the case, or do you fear that if we don't make the right decisions, that this whole attitude of Durham being a progressive city could change and we could become another Raleigh?
Yeah, I mean, I think progressive is a tricky term, right? Like, what does it really mean to be progressive? I know that, I have always thought of Durham as a progressive city for sure, but we also, we have one of the highest child poverty rates in the state. And our poverty rate has actually gone up over the last 10 years since we've been investing a lot of money in our revitalization. We have Durham is definitely a very strongly, heavily Democratic city. We're basically a one party town. I think something like 12% of folks in Durham are registered Republican, which is, you know, extremely low. In our early voting has ended for the primary for the city council.